Hi again, everybody. Welcome back to No Holden Back. It's been a while. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus. No furlough, but I took a little time off. My son did too. And we're starting off a series. I'm going to call it, Nick LaFave, I'm going to call it the Channel 10 Reunion Tour. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Betty. It's so good to see you.
You too, man. It's been a long time. So you and I and Jeremy Ross, who's going to be the next episode of these, I think it was last week, we kind of got going back and forth a little bit on Twitter. You guys are very active on there with all the things you're doing in news. Of course, if you don't know, Nick's the main anchor at WZZM in Grand Rapids. We worked together for a couple of years in Lansing, which we'll get into a lot. And it just kind of sparked me, man. I was like, you guys, I have so much respect for what both of you guys and so many people we work with, Nick, are doing and have done in their careers. Let's just start, first of all, how are things with you? How are things with your family in Grand Rapids?
We're good. We're counting our blessings because we're employed and we're healthy. And when you put it in perspective, that's better than a lot of people out there right now. By sheer coincidence, my wife decided to quit her job right before the pandemic started. I know, total coincidence. She put in her 2 weeks, and then we started seeing cases rise, and we thought for a second we might be going into a depression. Do you really want to willingly give up your job right now? But yeah. Yes, because the flip side of that is she's pregnant, and we're due with our second child in October. So again, counting the blessings. We're doing well. Work has been great. They helped me set up, and you can see a camera over my right shoulder here, and set up a real basic home studio. So I've been broadcasting from home since late March. So, things are as good as can be. We're lucky, we're healthy, we're employed. We have no room to complain about anything right now. We're good. So thank you. And I hope you're doing well too, man.
I'm doing all right, man. I'm just, I'm making TV in my living room, man, as you've seen. And, following each other on social media. And I left in 04 from 10. Yep. When did you leave?
I was there until February of 07.
Okay.
And from there, I had two choices. I could have, I remember, if you remember, I was chasing Tim Skupik around in the Capitol. They were trying to turn me. Yeah. They were either trying to set me up to replace Colthorpe in the mornings or Skupik at the Capitol, because I was anchoring weekends with you.
Yep.
And they didn't really quite know what my future path had if I wanted to stay at 10. So I had a choice leaving 10, leaving Lansing. I could go to Cincinnati to be a political reporter, or I could go to tiny Duluth, Minnesota to be a main anchor. And I decided I wanted to live near Lake Superior one more time. For people who don't know, I grew up in Marquette. I missed the water. Went up to Duluth, spent 5 good years there, met my wife, loved it. It was cold. Really cold.
I've never been. I want to go there in the summer, Nick, because as you know, I'm always there in January or February, and it's 30 below. I've always wanted to go up there and drive around Lake Superior, man. So I love it.
Best 2 weeks of the year.
Best 2 weeks.
Awesome.
Just like Marquette, where you're from.
Yeah, and the thing is, Marquette gets like twice as much snow. It's nowhere near as cold as Duluth. It is stupid cold there. But and then we went to the other extreme. After 5 years there, we decided we want to get warm, so we went to Shreveport, Louisiana for 3 years, and decided we missed the Midwest. And fortunate enough to get the job here in Grand Rapids, and we're done. We're set. We're not going anywhere.
That's home, man. That's great. You've won a bunch of awards. You and Jeremy Ross, man, are like you guys are the poster boys for the WILX alumni, man. You guys have won about 50 Emmys, I think, and all kinds of awards. So. I know the hockey player and you will probably say, "Oh, it's a team effort, right?"
It is. It's first of all, we had a great crew.
We did
in Lansing in the early 2000s. We had a fantastic crew. A lot of people still doing great work. But it's I refer to the trophies and the Emmys as oversized paperweights. They're nice. We get to play dress up and go get drink and celebrate each other, which is nice. But as I'm sure, being a journalist, a sports journalist, but still a journalist yourself, it's about the work. It's about the work. And Jeremy and I and yourself and other people, we've been fortunate that we've been able to do this job for as long as we have and have some success at it. So it's been a good ride so far.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of go back. We're obviously going to get into a lot of the stuff from 10, but I kind of like to go back and kind of go from, as I like to say, go from point A to point B the best we can.
Yeah.
And here you don't have a producer chirping you. I don't have a producer chirping me. Hey, you got 10 seconds. We got all the time we need, man. So Marquette native, talk to me about growing up, and when do you recall the first time that it bit you, or you had an interest in getting into the field that you've been in and been very successful at for all the years, Nick?
So grew up in Marquette, itty bitty town. I think anyone listening to your podcast or this video chat knows Marquette.
Yep.
Is at least familiar with it. Didn't know what I wanted to do. In high school, I got into acting just because, and wound up getting a scholarship to go to Northern on a theater scholarship. And 3 years in, decided, okay, it might be time to grow up and do something that's going to pay a mortgage, because I really wasn't that good of an actor. Broadcasting was my minor because I always at least had an interest in news. Like, I was the kid, looking back, it made so much sense because I would steal my parents' paper and read it. I would stay home, literally, Benny, this is why I never had a girlfriend in high school. I would stay home on Friday nights to watch 2020.
Really?
If there, oh yeah, I did it all the
Wow.
time. Your friends were going out, but I'd see something like 2020 was doing a great story on something. I loved 60 Minutes. So it made sense that when I tried to figure, okay, what I want to do, well, I had no direction when I decided I didn't want to be an actor. So I did an internship at WLUC, the NBC in Marquette, and I fell in love with it. I followed a reporter. I shadowed a reporter for several weeks, or several reporters, and I just got the bug right there. I'm like, this makes sense. I want to tell stories. I want to do news. And I added the second major in broadcasting, added a 5th year to school. And when I graduated in 2001, I just started applying all over the place like journalists do. And I took my first job 1,500 miles away in Missoula, Montana. And there begins the story.
What were those days like for you, man? I know you were a one-man band in it even back then, man. So what else stands out from that experience of the 2 stops that you had in Montana?
So I started off in Montana, and they hired me in Missoula. They started me off to be a morning producer / reporter, which essentially meant that I showed up at 3 a.m., got coffee for the in-studio guests, helped the anchor punch up the scripts, and if there was a car accident, I grabbed a camera and I went on it.
Yeah.
Not very glamorous. I still remember I signed my first job making $15,500 a year.
What'd you do with all that?
Starved is what I did. Thank God I refereed hockey on the side. I was refereeing in the North American League at the time, like kids hockey in the North American League. And I would drive, like on my days off, I would drive from, well, more so when I got to Bozeman, because I had a franchise there. I'd drive from Bozeman to Bismarck to Billings. I'd drive all over the place.
You go to Fargo, places like that too?
Yeah. Fargo was a little far to get all the way to the Fargo Dome. Bismarck was about as far as I went when I was in the North America.
Okay.
But so I did that for about 3 months in Missoula. And then our meteorologist left, took a new job, the weekend meteorologist. Well, they didn't want to hire another meteorologist in Market 160 to do the weekends, because 3 days a week they had to do news, and they weren't, I love meteorologists, but not always effective at doing news stories. So they said, well, LaFave's got a degree in performance theater. And they pulled me in. They said, you think if we teach you just about enough about weather, you can basically act your way through a 4-minute weathercast? And I'm like, yeah,
of course.
Especially if it means getting off the morning shift. So I did weather. I did weekend weather.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've still got the videotapes to hold me hostage, if anyone ever sees them. So I did that for 9 months. I hated it. I was not a weather guy. They were actually talking about paying for my meteorology degree if I wanted to go and get it, but I wasn't interested. Then after a full year in Missoula, the 10 p.m. anchor job came open at our Bozeman affiliate, which is 3 hours east. So they sent me to Bozeman, and I was there for 2 years as a nightside reporter and 10 p.m. anchor, and I loved that. Bozeman, they're both great towns. University of Montana, Montana State, just great towns. I actually almost stayed in Bozeman, got out of the industry because I was making such good friends and do something else. But I was still liking my job, and that is when actually I had a coworker who knew, if you remember, Kevin Vanderkolk.
Yeah, I remember Kevin. Yeah.
Behind the scenes guy at ILX in Lansing, and weekend anchor position came open at Channel 10 in Lansing, and they put in a word for me. I called, I sent in my tape, and about a week later, Mr. Kevin Reagan gave me a call. Hey, Nick LaFave, it's Kevin Reagan. News director at WILX in Lansing. I want to talk to you about our weekend anchor job. So,
how's your stout impression?
not as good as Colthorpe's. Not as good as Colthorpe. It's like, all right, welcome to Stout on Sports. We're going to be talking about this hockey story where a coach was having his players beat the crap out of each other on the ice. And Nick LaFave, he's a longtime referee, both college and high school. He's going to talk to me a little bit about this. Nick, you tell me, what rules is he breaking on the ice there? My stout was never that good. Colthorpe's is legendary.
He would always say to me, I don't know how you know all these guys, but it's amazing. You're destined to be in the National Hockey League, and that's all I can say. Now, can you run these down the hall and slug them whatever you want?
Whatever you want. Did you ever hear the story when his email crashed the system at work?
I might have been gone, man, but I'm sure it's a classic.
Quick anecdote.
Come on, that's what this is all about, man.
Okay, so we are transferring over from an antiquated email system to a brand new newsroom server. This is circa 2003 or 4 or whatever.
I was definitely gone. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm sitting next to Tim in the meeting, and they're saying, well, this is how you do this, this is how you do this. And he eventually gets, all right, everybody, I'm going to tell you something right now. Yep. If you want to send me mail, you put a stamp on it, you drop it in a box outside your house. That's it.
That is so Tim, man.
2 months later, our system crashes, the whole newsroom system. And we're on with Atlanta, where I think was the headquarters for Gray. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And they said, you have a T stout who works there? I said, yeah. They said, okay, he has about 6,000 unchecked emails. So they had to fix that. A week later, I'm in the sports office with Tim and your successor, Jeremy Sampson.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there talking, and he's like, hey, Tim, just so you know, you've got a couple of emails here. And Tim on his typewriter goes, delete them. Delete them. Don't even want them. Just get rid of them. Don't want them.
Excuse me. He is a beauty, man. I mean, I don't know if he knows how to get around on the internet anymore. I got to get him on here.
You do. Oh,
I will. I just don't know. He's probably, I don't know how to do that. If you just want to come into the station and do it, I'll do it there. That's fine.
Tim trying to do Zoom.
Anyways, we digress. So you stayed in Lansing, what, 5-6 years, right? You were there?
Not quite that long. I was there 07 to, I was there 04 to 11.
So 04 to 11, okay.
04 to, so about 3 years, and that's when I took the job in Duluth, Minnesota. I was there from 07 to 11, Louisiana for 3 years, and now in Grand Rapids.
Got it. So since we're on Lansing, let's hit on some of that stuff right now, and then we'll move our way to Duluth and your other stops and a bunch of other stuff we're going to dive into as well. So all kidding aside, looking back on the time in Lansing, what are some things that you really feel were instrumental in you developing into the broadcast or the journalist that you are now?
I remember two things that really kind of shaped me in Lansing. One was a big success and one was a big failure. Not long after I got there, you probably remember this, there was a shooting at the Red Robin.
I do, yeah.
There was a hostage situation. It was a guy who was wanted for a double murder. And it broke over the weekend that there was a car chase and he ran into the Red Robin. And hostage situation, he had a pregnant waitress, with a gun to the head outside. Mm-hmm. And we were hearing all this develop. And of course, there are no managers there on the weekend. My producer is a rookie out of college, and I'm still a kid at that point, perfectly blunt.
Yeah.
But I start making the calls about we need to do this. This person go here, go here, go here. I had to call our chief photographer in and get him up there. And it was amazing coverage. We did really, really well. And I wound up getting a one-on-one interview with that waitress who was shot by police. And I wound up getting a one-on-one interview with her weeks later after she testified I think at his arraignment hearing, or one of his early court appearances. And she did a one-on-one interview with me, and that was really good coverage we did. I flexed some muscle as a newsroom leader, and then I got the great story as a journalist, and I won some pretty good awards for it. And so that really gave me a lot of confidence. Fast forward about a year and a half later, I started making a ton of mistakes. I shut down the wrong car manufacturing plant. You remember in the mid-aughts, there were a ton of car manufacturing plants closing. Well, I came back from vacation and one had announced closure while I was on vacation. I walk into the afternoon meeting at 2:30 and the news director says, Nick, you're going to go cover this plant closing. And I said, which one? He goes, well, the one from yesterday. Not really any context. And so he said, your photographer will bring you there. And I'm not going to name the photographer because he, made a mistake too, and I don't want to bring him into this.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yep. But he said, well, I'll bring you there. So he brings us to a plant. I spend hours getting interviews from people in the neighborhood telling them that their plant is going to be closing. And then we go live at 5 o'clock, and I'm standing in front of this plant saying that they're going to be closing in 2 months. I was standing in front of the wrong plant. I put the wrong 5,000-man workforce out of a job.
Oh, boy.
Phone started ringing.
Yeah.
I could have lost my job. In a lot of ways, I probably should have lost my job. There was a plant about 4 miles away, and I just didn't check. I just assumed that we went to the right plant. And I didn't even get written up. Kevin pulled me in, and to his credit, he said, you made a mistake. This is really your first one here. You're going to learn for it. But the problem is my confidence was shot. I kept making mistake after mistake after mistake for about 2 months, even little stuff, just getting people's names wrong. Producers didn't want me in their shows because they couldn't trust me to be correct. And so Adela Uchida, a coworker of ours and a mentor of mine, brought me outside one day and said, she said, I'm going to go outside for a second. Come with me. I said, okay. We get out there, and she just looked at me. She goes, stop it. And I go, what? She goes, just effing stop it. And she goes, you're too good a reporter to be making all these mistakes. Stop it. And so I really had to bear down, and I double checked and triple checked everything, and I eventually got my confidence back. So it's those two things, that story with the Red Robin and me just having that cycle of failure for about 2 months, really helped shape me in a lot of ways. It's a story of how you can get confidence, lose it, and then get it back. So
yeah, that's the first time I heard that story. Obviously, when we're working together, but it makes me think of a good friend of mine. I'm not afraid to say this. I've had a lot of partners in a wide array of sports, and you may know this just from social media and seeing stuff. But it's Jay Feely. And,
the kicker. Yeah, I know you guys are tight. Yeah.
And Jay always said that your biggest lessons are learned through failure. I mean, here's a guy that they did a Saturday Night Live skit on him. He missed 3 game-winning field goals in Seattle one year. Dane Cook's playing Jay Feely on the long ride home.
I didn't know that.
And then him and I are doing a game 3 years ago, and he thought a ball went off a crossbar, and it was 8 feet right. It's going to be probably forever remembered as one of the great blunders in the history of sports broadcasting, but it didn't shake him. And to your credit, man, point is, man, I give you a ton of credit for that, man, because that probably would have, as you said, Nick, it probably would have got a lot of people fired, and it probably would have ruined a lot of people. But it must be that Youper in you that kept you driving, huh?
It must have been. Well, probably part the Youper and probably part the fact that the general manager told me outright that the only thing that saved me was a good reputation at the time. So,
hey, that's important.
It is,
as we know, man.
Yeah, and they said, if you were a jerk, if you were a problem employee, you would have been gone. But fortunately, for the most part, I try to treat people well, and that saved me. That saved me, and it gave me a second chance. And I still screw up. I screw up 5 times before breakfast, every day. But it's fortunately, I haven't put thousands of people out of work erroneously again.
Yeah, don't do that anymore, will you?
No.
So you head out of Lansing. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the. Let's get a little off the cuff, as Tim would say. Yeah, let's go off the cuff a little bit.
Off the cuff.
What are some funny stories that you remember? It doesn't matter who it involved. Just feel free to share, man. I'm anxious to hear what you got in the hamper there.
Funny stories from Lansing. I remember one night at a bar, Lori DeGavito. We were only ever just friends, but there was apparently some guy who was giving her more attention that she wanted. And she walked up to me and just started snuggling into me like we were, a married couple, on our anniversary. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, you're my boyfriend for 5 minutes. I need to get you. This is like, okay. And I remember that one. I remember I'm one of the only reporters I think who's ever gotten away with telling Kevin Reagan to F off or shut the F up is what I said.
Wow.
There was a breaking news story. It was down to the wire. 11 o'clock is coming fast, and we're in the editing room. We're trying to get everything in. It's like, did you get this in? Yes, I got that in. And it's tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
The top of the show is coming fast. And and tempers are high with everybody, with me, with Kevin. There's a photographer who's doing the editing. It's like, get that in. You need to get that in. I go, Kevin, I got it in. Shut the F up. And everyone got real quiet because Kevin is a big, loud guy to begin with. And
Yeah,
not
he
many
is.
people. And so we didn't have time to hash it out right there. I had to go put my tie on in front of the show or front of the story. I did. And at the end of the newscast, you remember this, people at home, my desk was literally right outside our news director's office.
Yep.
Right outside. You take
Yep, I remember.
one step outside his office and to the right, and there I am.
Bad
So
spot to be, brother.
Oh, you have no idea. And so I'm sitting there knowing that we are going to have to talk about the fact that I just cursed out my boss.
Right.
And all of a sudden I just hear, hey, LaFave. And I don't even turn around. I went, yeah. And he goes, good job. Thanks. That was all it was. That was all it was. So it's, man, Lansing was a trip.
It was, man.
It was. Some of my best times were there. I remember right before I moved from Lansing to East Lansing, the last night I was there, I was in a bad neighborhood. I'd lived there for a full year and nothing had happened. And literally the night before I moved, my car got broken into.
Oh.
Great timing there. No one's ever going to forget getting tear gassed at Michigan State University basketball riots.
Yep.
I don't think there's a reporter on our staff who didn't go through that rite of passage.
You're right.
You know, the thing I'll always remember about Lansing is, and this is, when you work with that many people in the same building, no one's going to get along completely all the time.
Yeah.
But we had a good crew that hung out well, and just a good group of people with a lot of fun, people mostly in their 20s and 30s who were just having fun. So it was a good 3-4 years for me.
You're right, man. It was whether it was sports or news, we were all close, and we all, look, at the end of the day, we all had a common goal. That was be as good as we can be here and get the hell out of here and move up. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, that's just the way that market is, that size of market. And, not many people, the exception of Tim, in Provenzano and David. I mean, some people like that. I'm not knocking it. It's just kind of, for most people, I should say, that's the reality. You're going there. It's a step. It's a part of the process. It's a springboard, whatever you want to call it. And do you remember a sports guy that used to mess with you when you have to read your T's?
Jim Bolden, something like that. Jim, Ben. Yeah, you were fun. I mean, whether it would always be. I mean, I think it was when you would throw things at me, like you crumple up a script every once in a while, and you chuck one at me. I mean, I was
just trying to welcome you to the family, Nick.
Well, no, what was funny is because you have this very loud, big, great laugh. And I remember I always wanted to try and get you to bust or break a little bit, but you never would, damn it.
Well, 16 years later, here we are.
I know. No, me, you, and Double D on the weekends.
That was fun, man. That was a good time. And, Drummond was, you're talking about doing the weather. And, again, Andy's going to do one of these with me too. I talked to him last week, and
good.
I love the weather guys, man, but I used to mess with Dennis and be like, here's a quarter, dude. Just flip this so you don't eat all my time up, brother. It's going to be sunny. I'm like, what do you need 4 minutes for to tell me it's going to be sunny out? I got all kinds of stuff here.
I used to joke, like the highs, I'll be right. The highs tomorrow is going to be between 4 and 98. Yes. I'm going to be right.
Correct.
Might rain, might not.
It was good times, man. I enjoyed that. It's, for me, and like you said yourself, man, it's, it was a very instrumental time in developing and, just the ability to go out like you did in news. You're cranking out a piece, 2 pieces every day, and, or you're anchoring, whatever, just the reps, and you always hear athletes talk about that. You need reps. You got to have a certain amount of games or practices or whatever. And, that was a big time. Anything else from Lansing? You want any memo stories?
Memo was gone before I got there. I've never met the legendary Memo.
Oh my gosh.
I got there.
I'm gonna get her on too. I'll probably have to beep that one like every 8 seconds. She had a mouth like a sailor on her, but
I've heard nothing but good things.
She got stuff done. All right, so on to Duluth you go. You said 5 years you were up there?
There from 07 to 11. So yes, about 5 years.
Okay. So that was the opportunity you had to go up, as you said earlier to me, you had an opportunity to be the main anchor there. So of course you're going to go for that. You met your wife there. What other things are cemented from that stop in your career?
Duluth was the first place that really felt like home since I left Marquette. I'd lived in Montana, 2 different cities in Montana, and Lansing. Duluth felt like home, and I think because of what you said earlier, it's a lot like Marquette in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
But I met friends there who are truly like family now, and part of that is because they were friends with my wife, my now
Right.
wife. And we also launched that station. It was a Fox startup. So
Nice.
I felt a lot of ownership over that newscast. I was very much like an assistant news director, I felt. We built it up from nothing. And by the time I left, we were beating the Twin City stations for Emmys. We were beating NBC station. I'd been on the air for 50 years in ratings. So leaving Duluth was the only city I've ever left where it was painful, like painful to leave. My wife and I, the best sports memory we have is when UMD won the national title in 2011.
Yeah.
We were second row against the University of Michigan, second row, just inside the blue line when UMD scored the overtime winner, to watch
Schmidt.
UMD. Yeah, Schmitty. And
Yep.
I've got right around the corner here in my living room, or in my downstairs living room here, I've got the newspaper framed with our ticket stubs.
Cool.
So, I was there for UMD's first national title. I've been able to watch the next 2 on TV. So UMD, I never went there. My wife didn't go there, but it's almost like an adopted school for me now because I got to know the school so well, both the education and the sports side.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are some highlights aside from that, maybe in the news side, that stories you covered, events that happened that still stick out for you in the time there, Nick?
So really one of my favorite, a couple of them. One's a real positive one. So where International Falls is,
Yep.
all the way up on the border.
Yep.
I got wind of a boy up there who had a medical condition who could not play organized hockey. He was like 10 years old, I think. And his parents, once a month, would drive 7 hours, I think, to the Twin Cities to play in a special needs hockey league. 7 hours all the way down there from International Falls once a month so he could play hockey. And so my photographer and I went up to International Falls, which was 3.5 hours from Duluth to begin with. And we talked with him at home and his mom, and they had a backdoor ice rink like everyone does in International Falls.
Yeah.
And then the day, about a week later, when they drove down to Twin Cities, we drove up to International Falls and tailed him the whole way and filmed his journey just to go play hockey for an hour. And then we got there and we profiled the whole special needs hockey league. It was a 2-part story, and it broke up as soon as they got in the car to go down there. Or no, it ended just as he was putting on his skates in the arena. And I think it wasn't in the Twin Cities proper, but it was in a suburban area, but
a diner or something like that.
I think that's something like that. So
Yeah.
I got to do that story. We got an Emmy nomination out of it, got a lot of attention for a special needs program that, I was always needing funding. And then the other story, I will never forget this. And if I cry on you, forgive me, I'm a sap. A woman who was in her late 20s and was an ER nurse, had a daughter and her husband, and she developed a rare kind of cancer, started in her heart. And normally cancer spread to your heart, but to have it originate in your heart is extraordinarily rare. And I basically went to interview her to talk about the rarity of it and how the day after she got diagnosed, they took all these family photos because they knew she was going to be losing her hair, and to help promote a fundraiser for her because their medical costs were out of sight. Well, 2 days after our story aired, I like to think it had a part in playing it, but the fundraiser at that dinner was out the door at like an hour-long wait. And, they just raised a ton of money. And, I still have a copy of that story. And she did wind up passing away, trying to get some experimental treatment in Texas about a year later. But that story, it's hard to describe it after the fact, but I've always really held on to that story, I think in part because my wife lost her mother to cancer when she was only 12, and this woman was leaving behind, I think, an 8-year-old daughter. So that was a real personal story. But it's, the hard stories need to get told too. You tell them with heart, and yeah, I remember how grateful she and her family were after we aired that piece. So those are a couple of the stories that have stuck with me after 5 years into it.
That's powerful, man. I used to love those kind of stories too. And I miss doing what you guys do, yourself and Jeremy and Colthorpe and all these folks that we worked with, going out and telling a story and actually having the time. And, that's a great part of what you do. Is that has to have something. Looking at some stuff here I pulled up. I did a little search on you because it's been a few years.
You snooping me?
I snooped you. Yeah, it's like when you've been married for a while. I mean, I was single for 10 years and, dating. So oh, you're going to Google you. What do you think? I'm lying to you? Anyway, you do a segment. I don't want to get totally into Grand Rapids now, but I want to mention this because you do a thing called One Good Thing. Is that I'm sure has something to do with maybe the way in the story you just told me? Does that tie in there in any way, or what are those kind of stories that you do at CZM?
So those stories, basically, that started out during the campaign cycle in 2015. I got sick of politics because I had to report on it every day. So I just started stealing positive things I saw people put on Facebook, and I'd share them on my page. And they were getting a lot of traction. I branded it, and then my bosses said, "Hey, do you think you could put this on air every day?" And I said, "I'm sure I could." And so for 2.5 years now, whatever it is, every single day, I get 2 minutes in the newscast to do whatever I want with it and put something positive on the air to make people feel good about where they live. And it's great. It's kind of therapeutic, so it's been really, really nice, especially, in today's world. It's even worse politically than it was 4 years ago. So, that's been nice that I get, my bosses encourage me to put something good out into the world every day.
That's good because, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but there's enough negativity, and many people say, oh, it's the media and this and that. And, the media stirs all this up. You know what? People stir it up, man. I mean, we're both on social media, and I love that because personally, I'm a positive guy, man. And sometimes the negativity it gets to you. And, I understand that you guys have a job to do. You have to show certain stories. And I want to get into that more with you as we go along here. But so let's talk a little bit about the next stop. How long were you in Shreveport when you left Duluth?
Just 3 years. Did one contract.
What are the highlights from that stop, aside from not having to shovel snow for a while?
The food.
The food. A lot of jambalaya.
A lot of jambalaya, po' boy. It's the cuisine there was great. We'd go down to New Orleans every once in a while. The people were just the people and the culture. It was so unlike anything that I had ever experienced growing up in the far north of the country. The heat killed us. I mean, it killed us. Yep. So, and we missed family. I mean, the biggest thing is we were so far removed from family. So we couldn't do it. We couldn't stay. Work was great. I just had fantastic bosses and great coworkers, and I missed them dearly. Matter of fact, we had one coworker, we wound up getting her a job at my station because she was talented and we missed her. So we brought her up to Grand Rapids with us. So Shreveport was a wonderful experience, but nothing can replace, your family and being around. Like, we missed hockey. I will never forget this. I signed my contract in May. I signed my contract in June of 2011. I was to start in August of 2011. In July of 2011, both the local hockey and baseball teams folded.
The Mud Bugs, right?
Mud Bugs.
Yeah.
Yep. They were in the North
CHL,
American League. Yes, CHL. Yeah, I think whatever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were two of the things that my wife and I love doing most, are going to baseball and hockey games, which is great with Grand Rapids. But so we signed this contract, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that if those two teams had folded a month before I signed my contract, I probably wouldn't have signed my contract. What it is. That job helped me get into my dream city, which is Grand Rapids.
Yeah. So I'm going to detour a little bit. So the one thing that I didn't know, I think you may have known because we have a mutual friend. The the Pacolas, as you say it in the U, right?
The Pacolas.
Pacolas. Now your brother Jeff graduated. Was he in '88 like me?
88.
And he went out with a state title.
State title, Marquette Redmond. They actually just, because there are no sports to play, right? Sports to cover. TV6 just ran highlights of that game against Ann Arbor Pioneer while I was up in Marquette visiting a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, my brother, he had the game-winning assist, took a shot from the point, and it deflected. And my brother's name is Jeff, and a guy by the name of Jeff Burkhar popped in the rebound. But when I was watching as a kid, Jeff LaFave scores, Jeff LaFave scores. I thought my brother got the game-winning goal, but we think he got the Jeffs mixed up. But yeah, and he is the same age as Diener, I think, Dean Pacala, right?
Yeah, Dean's 50. I'll be 50 in November. And your brother, cream puffed me on the wall a few times.
Because Traverse City wasn't split then, right? It was one Traverse City team?
It was one school, and the conference was Marquette, Alpena, Escanaba, the Sioux, and us.
Okay.
And at the time, I mean, it was, in my opinion, it was the best conference in the entire state. I mean, from living in Duluth and just knowing the sport, you knew this was going to go to hockey at some point, right?
Of course.
I mean, I can't help it, and I know you're a huge hockey guy too.
Yeah.
Minnesota high school hockey, there's no state that's better.
Mm-hmm.
There's travel here, but that conference, man, and so 87, we lose to Alpena. They win the state title. 88, we lose in the regionals to your brother. Excuse me, and they win the state. Your brother's a hell of a player, man. Did he have a chance to go play anywhere after or not?
No, I mean, he was not too many people looking for 5'6" defenseman.
True, not then.
Not then, yeah.
Maybe a little more now,
but he got into the refereeing. He came within an eyelash of refereeing in the NHL, and he actually did referee some preseason games. And the way my brother tells it, and I have no reason not to believe him, he would have made the NHL if he was, if he'd started about a decade later, like my age, because in the 90s when he was trying to make it, from what he says, it was still an old Canadians boy club, and it was still one referee. So he hangs it up at 30 years old, goes back to Michigan Tech to finish school because he was tired of living in a hotel, for all of his 20s. Yeah. And then about 4 years later, they go to four-man refereeing in the NHL, and he heard from people high up that he would have been there. He would have gotten the call if he would have stayed. Wow. But goes back to Tech, meets his wife. He's happy. He's doing well.
So back to you. And so at what age did you start reffing? How young were you?
Started timekeeping when I was 12.
12.
Yeah, so I couldn't have been much older because I think this would this be my 30th year refereeing? I'm going to be 42. I'm going to be 42 in a week. And I started skating, at least informally, I think, some games when I was 12. So yeah, my brother's about to start his 50th year, or his 40th year refereeing, and I started. I can't keep track anymore. I've been doing a long damn time. And unfortunately, with COVID, I'm probably going to break my streak this year. I'm doubtful there's going to be any games. But yeah, I've been refereeing hockey. I've done some collegiate, juniors, high school kids. The thing I joke about now is I make 10-year-olds cry when I give them tripping penalties.
Way to go.
But I'm the best college job in the world. You make more per hour than tilting bottles at a bar. And like I said, when I was in Montana, bringing home about $700 a month after taxes, refereeing hockey on the side saved me. I wouldn't have been able to have that job otherwise. Like literally every weekend I was refereeing so I could supplement my income. And now I do it because I'm old and fat and I need exercise.
Oh man, you're a beauty. Back to the path before we get into some topical stuff. So how did the Grand Rapids thing come up, man? Was that a place you targeted? Did you want it? Is that somewhere you had in your sights all along?
I actually started when I was in Lansing. I came over here to cover President Ford's funeral when he passed away, and I fell in love with the city. I'm like, I've never been here before, and it was great. Yeah. But the problem is, anchors in this town, you get a job and you don't leave. It's such a desirable city. And I remember in the summer of 2013, we were coming up here to visit some friends and family. And so ahead of time, I emailed all the news directors in the Grand Rapids area. And I said, this is who I am. Here's my resume. I'm going to be in town. I'd love 10 minutes of your time because this is where we want to get to. We're in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And came up here and met with a couple of the news directors. The news director at the time here at WZZM decided not to meet with me. And I'm like, okay. And we were at my aunt and uncle's house in Spring Lake. And my wife, when we came in, fell in love with West Michigan, fell in love with it. And we're sitting there watching the news that night. She's like, why can't you get a job here? And I said, because people don't.
Right.
And I said, look at that guy on TV right now. Look at that guy. He's been anchoring news since 1977 in the city of Grand Rapids, a year before I was born.
Yeah.
He doesn't leave. Ironically, jumping ahead in the story, that was Lee Vandermeed, the guy I would eventually replace a year later. The late Lee Vandermeed, yes.
Wow.
So a year later, I find out that the news director at WZZM had been let go. I'm like, oh, new leadership. So I hear that the new news director, Taz Painter, was hired. I give him a day to find the bathroom, and then I send him an email. And they had an opening in the mornings. They liked me for it. The numbers didn't work out financially wise, but then there was an opportunity in the evening as they were transitioning Lee. And Lee, God rest his soul, he was both very honest with and very kind to me about the transition because he was open. He said, I did not want to get pulled off the desk. It was not his decision. They made the choice to make the move for him. He said as much in his last night on the desk, but Lee was never anything but completely professional and completely kind to me because they didn't let him go. He was still in the newsroom as a reporter. So it was kind of an awkward situation in that the guy I'm replacing is still there. I took his desk in the newsroom and everything. It was really awkward. But until he retired about 2 years later, he was fantastic to me. And I'm always going to be grateful for that because a lesser person would have made that a difficult situation, but Lee was simply too classy to let that happen. So that's how I got to Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that's I love stories, man. We've all got one. And, it's how did he pass away?
I believe it was complications from diabetes.
Really?
I believe, yeah, about a year or so ago. I did a podcast on it, on how well he treated me. Yeah. I'll send you a link if you want to listen to it.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. I mean, that's, we've all had people help us, and no matter what we do in this crazy world of broadcasting. So, last week I see you on Twitter and, there's LaFave. He's interviewing the governor. I mean, dude, I'm like talking to royalty here, man. Like
you are not.
I'll toot your horn because I know you won't.
I appreciate it.
No worries, man. We got to stick together in this thing. So, how many times have you done that since all this stuff started in March?
With the governor, 4 or 5 times I've talked to her probably. It's easier now to interview a governor than frankly when I was in Lansing and Governor Granholm was down the street. I got to know her decently well because they'd send me anytime Skubik wasn't available, or when, to be frank, she didn't want to deal with Skubik's questions because his questions were better than mine. So it's as simple as doing a Zoom now. So I know her press person, have a professional relationship. If I have a question, something I want to talk about, I send them an email. If they're willing to have the time, they set it up. Or like last week, was it, or earlier this week? I think it was last week when the mask mandate came down for the state of Michigan. They were obviously doing a barnstorming thing. Where they released the plan and they're going to go talk to media all over the state. And they just said, "Do you want to talk to the governor?" I said, "Absolutely. I want to talk to the governor because I want to ask, how do you enforce this thing?" And which has obviously been an issue. So, I talk to the governor whenever possible. I'm talking to Senate candidates, John James on the Republican side. I'll talk to Gary Peters. Probably going to be doing something the 3rd district in Michigan with current incumbent independent Justin Mosh. It doesn't look like he's going to be running. So there are 3 Republicans looking for the nomination there and 1 Democrat, and the polling says it's going to be just an amazing race to watch. So I'm sure I'm going to be talking with the candidates in that race too as it gets forward. But we don't have a dedicated political person as a main anchor. My time is limited, but since we don't have a dedicated political person, I've kind of taken that role on myself as much as I can, which I enjoy to a point.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that's your passion in news is politics, or? or what exactly is it now as you've developed and matured into the broadcaster and journalist you are?
I don't know. I think it's probably the three areas that I gravitated towards. Like I was never an investigative reporter. That was never my thing, doing investigations and deep dive stories. I did politics because I've always enjoyed politics. I did breaking news a lot because that's what you do when you're a young reporter and you have small staffs. Everybody goes in the breaking news stories. But I really like doing like the personal features, that really connect with people. But having been pretty much a general assignment reporter everywhere I was as a reporter, I didn't really get a chance to say this is what my line is. Had I gone to Cincinnati and taken that politics job, probably. But I've also been an anchor for 3/4 of my career, more than that. So when a good portion of your day and your week is spent at a desk, that takes away from being getting a speciality as a reporter. So I've got areas of emphasis. I wouldn't say that there's been any one thing that I've truly specialized in now. But I do enjoy politics because I keep up until I got to go talk to my therapist again, and then I got to take a break.
Right. So leave it to me. So I'm going to ask you, so how do you see this whole thing with the face masks, and what'd you take away from the governor in regard to that? How do you see this all working out, man? I mean, oddly enough, I saw this morning, I don't know if you did or not, if you still follow our old station in Lansing, but somebody went into a quality dairy. It was out on the west side, Lansing Road.
Didn't they get shot?
Somebody went in and stabbed somebody, and then the person that stabbed the other person, they got shot.
Shot by the cops. Yeah, I did see that.
I mean,
so
how's this going to work, man? Just your opinion. That's I'm curious.
So basically the whole crux of my interview, I asked the governor 5 different ways how this is going to get enforced. What's to stop someone from walking to Costco saying, nope, I have a medical condition. No, thank you. How are you going to get employees and business owners to enforce policies when violence is happening? There was a guy in Flint who was killed over this. They're frankly, many of them are scared to enforce this. And this isn't an opinion. This is just a fact. The governor had no solid answer. She did not have a solid answer for how this is going to be enforced. She said, well, we can't stop everyone from looking for a loophole, like people who claim a medical exemption. I asked, what about sheriffs who say they won't enforce it, as we saw, I think, in Van Buren County, who already
I've
said
seen it in a couple spots.
Spots, yeah. And she said, we have to rely on them to do what's right, and we can't address every little instance. And I asked about employees who were scared, and all she said was, customers need to give them grace and realize this isn't their doing. So it was all rhetorical. It was all philosophical. Now you can agree or disagree with her philosophy on this. But as far as an actual structure for enforcing it, there was none. Now, what am I seeing when I go out? And again, this is anecdotal. This is not scientific, but I've been in Meijer a couple of times the last couple of days, and it is everybody. They have someone at the door saying, you will wear a mask.
Yeah.
I went to a dentist appointment the other day, though, and the person sitting at the front desk was not wearing a mask. So it's going to be scattershot. I think, I know the biggest detriment our country has had is that we are not wearing masks uniformly. If we were, we would look a lot more, to be frank, like Germany right now. We would look a lot more like New Zealand. Now, granted, these are bigger countries. New Zealand is an island nation. There are isolation things that come into play with them that we simply can't match, and we're a massive country. But when you look at the rates of positivity with the European Union to the United States, and the European Union is getting roughly to what we're at population-wise, our positivity rate is huge. Our curve is going way up when theirs is going down. So clearly we've done something wrong. And probably the biggest one in my mind, from what I've read by the experts, is we are not wearing masks. There are some studies that say if 80 to 90% of Americans wore masks, life would mostly be back to normal because the transmission rate would plummet. And then we could get back to things like listening to the best college hockey play-by-play guy calling UMD North Dakota again. Yeah, I'm talking about you. So hopefully people
tournament this year, by the way, but that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. So hopefully people get it. I was always afraid that we would start to flatten the curve, which we did, and then people would get complacent, which we did, and it went back up. So it's hard to get 330 million people on board. It
Yeah.
just is. But until we do, life isn't going to get back to normal. Even if we get a vaccine, maybe it's only 50% effective, like the seasonal flu vaccine. So can't predict the future, but I can tell you right now that as a country, as a society, we have failed in not wearing enough masks. It is, and that's not opinion, that is science.
I agree with you 100%. You know better than me in doing what you do. And I went down to Florida 3 months in. I mean, I'm not used to being home, man.
Yeah.
You know that.
You're on the road. You're on the road.
Last time I traveled, Nick, was the 29th of February. Last game I called was the night before, the 28th. It was Denver at St. Cloud. I mean, I had no clue. I mean, I'd heard about this thing, and me being on planes all the time. I mean, some say, oh, you're more, likely because it's a petri dish anyway on a plane.
Yep.
I mean, right? And, I just needed a break, man. I needed to get out of the house. And so my girlfriend and I drove with her son. We stayed with her dad. Her dad had just lost his girlfriend. She died of a heart attack in his arms April 3rd. Her dad is also his wife died. He buried a daughter. The guy's been through a lot. My parents are down there. So my point is, we were safe. I've been safe and all that, smart as I can. And I know you can still contract it. In Florida, you would not have known anything was going on. Zero. I mean, except for a few people in restaurants I went out twice with my folks to eat, and that was about it. But
you know now.
Exactly, man. And why do you think that it's become political? I mean, I almost feel like if you wear a mask, you're a Democrat. If you don't, you're a Republican.
Polls bear that out. There was a Gallup poll just the other day. A Gallup poll. Gallup poll, and I believe it said 93% of Democrats say they have worn a mask within the last few days. It was 47% of Republicans.
Right.
So it has become political, and you can talk about why. You can talk about, the fact that the president has refused to wear one. That there are groups of people who say masks aren't effective. There are people who say it's my constitutional right to not wear one. There are all manner of reasons why it has become political, but it has very much become this image of, if you wear a mask, you support the president, and if you don't, you are against the president. And there are some governors of both parties who are screaming. I think it was the Kansas Republican governor who was in tears, who was in tears saying, we cannot make this political. People are dying. And that is an unfortunate thing. I can't pinpoint exactly why it has become political, but that is where we're at right now, and it has. And I think the only way to correct that is with information, fighting against misinformation. And unfortunately, when something affects you personally, you take it more seriously. And statistics have also shown that most of the cases and most of the deaths are in urban city areas amongst minorities who are not traditionally Republicans. So your more conservative areas of the country haven't, until this point, been hit as hard. And when you don't see it in your neighborhood, like living in West Michigan, which is an affluent white part of the state, fewer people think that this is an actual thing than lower income minorities on the east side of the state. The Lieutenant Governor, Garland Gilchrist, who's African American, he's known 23 people who died from this thing.
Right.
I don't know one personally, but I'm also a white guy in an upper middle class home in a white part of the state. So the lens through which I look at this, if I wasn't educated about this working in news, would be completely different. And I can understand that. And that gets to an information problem. Where are people getting their information from? What is that information telling? There's a story today about a local church down the street from where I live. On the 4th of July service, they put up a 9-minute long QAnon conspiracy video in their church for their congregants, which said, and I'm paraphrasing, that the COVID-19 pandemic is the biggest political hoax and misinformation campaign spread by mass media in our lifetimes.
Wow.
How do you combat that to try and tell people that they need to take this seriously? Because we're already at 135,000 dead Americans that we know of. But the fact that most of them are happening where they don't live, they're not seeing it.
Right.
They're not feeling it.
Great perspective, man. The next, I don't want to get too personal, but
Yeah.
your daughter's of age where if things were the way they used to be, she'd be going to school next month, right? Am I
No,
correct?
she's only 2. She's only 2.
Only
She'll
two.
be
I'm
3
sorry.
soon.
Okay.
So she's getting close.
Okay. So you know where I'm going here. Is there some kind of cutoff? Do you get a sense? I don't think it's been reported. I haven't heard it. You know better than me. Again, that's why I'm asking. Where do we stand on that with kids in school? What do you know on that front as of today?
So the president and secretary of education, Betsy DeVos, are threatening to cut funding from school districts that do not go back to school full time. Full time, like no aspect of virtual learning. You can't go to school for 2 days in person and learn virtually for 3. They are threatening to cut funding for any school that does not have kids in class full time. That being said, a lot of districts are saying not a chance, not a chance. Fairfax, Virginia superintendent was just on CNN the other day, which I believe is the second biggest school district in the nation behind Los Angeles. It
Wow.
just said we would need the equivalent of 5 more pentagons as far as space goes to be able
Wow.
to socially distance effectively. It is simply not possible to do this,
No.
he says. So that's where we're at. You are seeing more and more people looking at homeschooling options, private tutor options. But again, this is for middle and upper middle class families in predominantly white neighborhoods. When you go to poor neighborhoods with a single parent who has to work full time or 2 parents who have to work full time, how in the world can you homeschool your kids?
Yeah.
And so it's a mess. I fear for what's going to happen when school starts, and I always pray that I'm wrong. I always pray that I'm wrong when I fear things, but I fear that we are going to open up schools, and then we're going to see massive transmission rates all over the place, and then they're going to shut them down, and we're going to be right where we were in March. I'm not a fortune teller. My crystal ball has never worked, despite me trying. So I don't know. All I know is, and I'm actually doing a series of interviews right now. I've spoken with the GVSU president, Philomena Mantella, Dr. Smith, the president of Eastern Michigan. I'm going to be speaking with the Central Michigan president here soon. I'm trying to talk to all the major school presidents in Michigan to talk about what they're doing at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
Nobody knows for sure. They have plans, but like Mike Tyson always said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
That's right. That's right. Now,
see how I brought that back to sports for you?
I love that, man. I love that, dude. Nice segue. So correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, Michigan State and Michigan, are they offering to stay home, do it online and in person? How's that work? Or where's that stand, Nick?
If I remember, and I don't have my notes in front of me, but if I remember, Michigan and Michigan State both anticipate having students on campus in some capacity. I know Harvard has said that they're going to be having a small percentage of students, of like freshmen on campus. Eastern Michigan, when I talked to their president the other day, they are guaranteeing anyone who wants a single dorm room on campus will get it. Again, I think everyone has plans to have students on campus to begin with, but once we start having outbreaks, if we see them, which more than likely we will, because we already are. You look at college sports. I mean, they're having practices with limited groups of players, and you're getting outbreaks with college football teams. We'll see what happens when the outbreaks start. Eastern Michigan says they are dedicating some dorm space simply for students who wind up testing positive, and they'll be able to isolate them there.
Sorry, yeah, I'd heard that about Eastern too, about the individual dorm rooms and things like that. So, I mean, it's amazing what's happened to me. Like, good or bad, it's been both sides. I mean, the country has shown its true colors to me in many ways, and again, I know you're a positive guy. I'm positive, and I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, man. And it's tough to see. I can't imagine. Tell me what it's like when you go through one of those shows where you're just like, wow, when you get done. What do you feel after that? How draining is that on you? Because none of us have ever experienced this, so it's got to be right up there with some of the toughest things you've dealt with in covering news, man.
Well, that's and I'm turning my daughter and kid were walking through there a second ago, but
it must be on TV too.
Right. So I mean, and I'm open about this. That's one of the reasons I started talking to a therapist. When this whole thing was starting, I was having panic attacks. I was imagining symptoms like, I've got this. I caught it somehow. Now I'm going to give it to my pregnant wife and my kid. And one day we were having lunch and I just got really, really, really lightheaded and started getting dizzy. And so I talked to a therapist and she said, well, you need to try and separate yourself from this. And I went, I can't. It's literally my job.
Yes.
And so whereas other people, they can watch the news for 10 minutes a day or ignore it completely. And go about their life. You know, read a book, go for a jog, watch replays of sports. People can disconnect in a way that I can't, because, and you know this, journalists, even when we're not at work, we're working. We're always on call, unless I'm 3 sheets to the wind on a 6-pack of Old Mill. I'm on call.
Still drinking that?
No, I haven't drank Old Mill in years, but it sounded funny. So, I had a hard time disconnecting. And, even before that, if we had an A block, and this is a pre-pandemic, murder, rape, house fire, someone died of cancer, drowning, at the end of an A block going in a commercial, I'm like, well, I want to go home and die. I mean, so it's news, the washout rate, people don't survive in this industry a lot, either because of the schedule or because of the mental toll. It's an emotional killer. It can be a relationship killer. It is a hard industry. And then when you stack on the pandemic, and again, I had a whole bunch of things. My wife decided to quit her job. A week later, we found out we were pregnant. A week after that, the shutdown and pandemic really started, happening. Then I found out I got furloughed. So boom, 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 boom. I just had all this, and then my damn cat died. You saw a kitten running across. My cat of 17 years died. So
wow.
So
all right, man.
Yeah, all these things piled on, and I couldn't deal. I had to talk to somebody, and it helped. So yeah, how it affects me, it affects me.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, man. I mean, I've gotten to the point where, when our buddy Colthorpe's on, if I know he's working, I watch, because Jay's one of us, and but personally, man, it's tough, man. I mean, the first month, I think that I was completely glued to it, man. I couldn't turn it off, and after that, it got to the point where it was just like
white noise.
Yeah, it's just, I can't imagine, dude. I mean, it's, I give you a lot of credit and a lot of respect for what you're doing to deal with it, man, because I know you're not the only one, and you know that too. And, you haven't been out covering any of the protests, obviously doing anchor, and you're not out in the field hardly at all, right?
No. And, there's actually a little bit of guilt involved with that, to be perfectly blunt. I'm in this cushy, temperature controlled newsroom or in my basement, and we've got younger reporters who are risking their health, to be perfectly blunt, to go out and cover these things. Now, thankfully, we haven't had any incidents in our newsroom, but there are other newsrooms across the country where reporters are getting sick. Journalists have died from this, just like anyone else. We live, a buddy of mine who's a professor at Hope College out here on the west side of the state said, life is simply a little bit more dangerous than it used to be. And humans need to find a different way to do life for a little while. And we haven't adjusted to that yet. We've neither literally adjusted to that or mentally accepted that yet, I don't think. It's a transition phase right now. And I've gone through phases like everyone else where I'm angry that this has happened. I've gone through moments where I'm afraid, like when I see problems with the food chain, it makes me realize sometimes how fragile society is. Like if there had actually been a food supply problem, like a genuine food supply problem, I feel awful for both people who have lost lives and livelihoods. Mm-hmm. And there's this powerlessness about it. Like there's nothing I can do. Like this problem feels, and it's global. This problem feels so huge. Mm-hmm. And when I go on air, when I do a story, sometimes you just feel crushed by the weight of it. And I realize, and I look upstairs, I got a 2-year-old wife and a kid on the way. It's like, I need to do everything I can to protect that. Yeah. Just like everyone else is thinking. Yep. So it's again, it's the accumulation of all these things. I feel like I'm talking to my therapist again right now with you, Ben, because I'm
here for you, man.
Everything. I appreciate it.
No, I mean, I get it, man. And, I've had, this is I think the 52nd one of these I've done. And, a lot of them I started with Luke, that's really how it started.
Yeah.
And that's been, one of those terms you can add it to the list of all the phrases from 2020 in the pandemic, the silver lining, certainly goes on that list. And, to be able to do stuff like that with my son. And, I've had a lot of people say what you just said, man. Matt McConnell does the Coyotes, a longtime buddy and, a colleague. And he got done. He's like, Benny, this was awesome therapy, dude. And I'm not going to lie. Selfishly, it helps me.
Yeah.
But look, we got a history. We have a friendship, and to me, that's what it's all about. There's not enough of that in the world today. It's everybody's, against this or against that or screw this. I'm not doing that. And, I think that, tell me your opinion on this too, Nick. I think part of the thing is that the society we live in is the now. When I say that, I think of the president saying, oh, it's just going to disappear. Right. And I think that factors into it. What do you think?
I don't disagree with you at all. Our society has changed in so many ways. I look at World War II a lot. I've read a lot about it, and I try to compare what's going on now to then.
Okay.
And after World War I and after World War II, Americans rationed food in massive ways so that Europe would not starve. And that was actually led by disgraced President Hoover, by the way. Both times he led those rationing efforts. FDR and Truman called on him to help. And during the wars, we rationed materials so we could build weaponry. So we pulled together as a society then in very real ways that directly and severely impacted our daily lives. And today we can't be convinced to wear a mask for 10 minutes while we're in mire.
Yeah.
So society has changed in a lot of ways that we don't think about the common good quite as much anymore as our individual wants. And as far as the now we want it now culture, there's an interesting story I read about millennials and Gen Z. They've grown up on social media. Yep. And it's all about how many likes and shares and comments you get. Like they get instant gratification when they post something. And they can watch in real time as the likes and what. So there's this instant now gratification.
Yes.
So it's hard for us as a culture now, I think, to think about the long game and that this is going to be a 1 to 2 year pandemic. And when we're so used to things being done now, download this video now. I'm reminded of that old ESPN commercial, instant pudding. It's like, actually, I like instant pudding.
Yes, I remember that
if
one.
you remember that one. So we are very much an instant now society, even more when that commercial came out 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, we could probably keep doing this for another hour, but I don't want to take too much of your time. It's awesome to catch up. Thanks for being the guinea pig. I mean, the first one on the Channel 10 reunion tour. And it's awesome to see you, man. It's been a long time, dude. And I'm really happy for you and got a ton of respect for what you've done. And, I think back to those weekends we sat together in Lansing for, I don't know how many months it was. I left in October of 2004, but always had fun, man. Always enjoyed working with you. And it's been fun to watch your career, your life unfold. And happy birthday in advance, my friend.
Thank you. And same to you. I have gotten a kick out of the last, 15 years, every time you've taken another step in your career, when I finally was able to start watching you call games, football and hockey, especially. I love when you call UMD. And I'm so ticked I haven't been able to have a drink with you at Grandma's. So no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I couldn't be happy for you. And every year I keep telling my buddies, I've got a buddy who's going to be calling the NHL soon. Just wait and watch. It's going to happen.
Well, thanks, Nick. That's really kind, man. And it's still a goal of mine, and I've got a great job, and I'm just kind of waiting this thing out, dude. But it's getting
we all are.
Where it's tough, man. Like you said, I have a ton of respect for what you said about the therapeutic part of it, man, because it really is, and it warms my heart, dude. Not to get too sappy on you, but it's just hard, man, because I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know when I'll call a game again. Personally, I think if there's no football, I'm looking at probably January before I slap a headset on and call a game. I mean,
I
I'm just being
wouldn't.
realistic.
No, I'm with you on that, and it breaks my heart. I said this on Twitter the other day. It didn't have to be this way. And when I
Yep.
think about, people who've been impacted, is everyone involved with sports at every
And
level.
music and entertainment,
Hmm.
right?
Everyone, and they could have been avoided in so many ways or mitigated at the very
Yeah.
least. And
Yeah.
that is to our detriment, both on a macro and personal level.
Yes.
But
Well,
I've loved this. This has been great, Benny.
good, man. Well, Jeremy Ross is up next in the rotation. So any message I can deliver for you to him?
Stop
School
winning so
check.
many. Stop winning so many awards. He makes everyone else look bad.
I'm talking about school check with him for about 5 seconds.
And ask him about. Apparently, he has the most amazing vintage sports card collection. He's got like a Gordie Howe rookie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That man has some amazing cardboard.
Yeah. I have a nerdy side in me like that too. You can kind of see just a sampling of what's behind me, but yeah, no, I will, man. And appreciate you doing this. Best to your family, your wife, your young daughter. And when's the baby due?
October.
Well, I'll be seeing you on social media.
You got it. What's your boy doing for college next year? Has he figured it out yet?
Yeah, he had an interesting year, man. He started at Adrian. I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version. Yep. The coach was out there. It didn't work. 12 guys quit the team, including half the group that was on the team last year. Went to Central for 2 months. This hit. He's been with his mom, my ex-wife. She's went through breast cancer. She's doing good. He's going to Concordia, which is right down the road from me, about 20 minutes in Ann Arbor.
Because I remember seeing that he was making a change. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, dude. And he's going to play. I didn't know I was going to get to see him play again, Nick. And that, as a parent, that was tough, man. I mean, he's been playing sports since he was 3. And, that whole, it's not only hard on the young man or woman or boy or girl, however you want to describe it, that's playing, but it's hard on the parents too, man.
Yep.
So I never pushed him with that. I let him make the decision, and he's going to play at Concordia for Ty McGuire, who was his travel coach for 2 years and the best coach he's had in lacrosse. So that's what he's doing, man.
Last thing before we get out, next week, a buddy of mine who lives in Ann Arbor is meeting me in Lansing to go golfing.
Nice.
I think we should do that sometime. I think we can meet in the middle, and you and I can hit 18 someday.
I'd love that. I was just up there at College Fields. You know that course, right? On
we're going to the Emerald.
Oh, beautiful. Dude, I'll play. I'd love to.
All right. We're going to set it up, but we're going to start texting here. We'll find ourselves a day.
Sounds good, Nick. Well, I got to be a professional here for like 10 seconds. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
For Nick LaFave, main anchor at WZZM in Grand Rapids and former coworker, appreciate him joining us here on the Channel 10 reunion tour here on No Holding Back. Until next time, my name is Ben Holden. Thanks so much for watching.